My name is Pete Blois. I'm a program manager on the Expression Blend team, and I'm here to talk about behaviors. It's a feature that we introduced in Blend 3, and how they can be used to make interactive and cool applications, essentially. So one of our goals for Blend 3 was to make it easy to design interactive applications. What we wanted to do was to make it possible for you to do something such as design when a user presses the space key to actually play an animation, or to do something such as make an element follow the mouse around the screen without having to write a bunch of code. These are fairly straightforward things to do. Like playing a storyboard is only one line of code. Like making something follow the mouse, there's tons of samples out there on the internet on how to do it. It's probably a dozen lines of code or something like that. But we really wanted a way to package these up and into basically reusable components, something that you can hand off to a designer. The designer can basically can leverage inside of the tool, reuse, customize, manipulate, and even for anybody, basically lower the bar for actually creating some interactive applications. And also sort of get rid of some of this code that keeps on getting copy-pasted around, reused, stuff like that. So this is the behaviors feature. The behaviors feature is actually made up of three components: triggers, actions, and behaviors. Triggers and actions, this is the first part, and this basically defines when something happens, do something together. And together, this is a big part of our language when we're actually talking about applications. We're always saying when the user clicks on this, when something happens, you know, I want a sound to play, I want crazy things to happen. So we introduced triggers and actions to basically express this type of scenario throughout the application. And the next one is behaviors. So when we talk about interactivity, there's a lot of things which don't actually fall into the pretty straightforward like cause effect. When something happens, do something. But which you want to just basically make it easy to actually use within the application. A good example of this is the mouse follow. There's no standard like when the mouse starts to move. I'll show some other examples soon. But also lots of animations. They fall into the behavior case where there isn't actually a very distinct starting point. So let's actually jump into Blend quick and see how to actually use these inside of the product, what they do. We expose actions inside of the actions and behaviors inside of the asset library, just like controls. You manipulate them, use them within the product very similarly to how we handle controls. And for this, like pretty common one, you know, if I wanted to play a storyboard when something happens, then I'll just take the control storyboard. For this, I'm going to drop it onto the tree. So I want to say when I click on the tree or when something happens on the tree, let's play a storyboard. When I select it inside of the property grid, we can see all the properties for the action. And this is saying which actions we actually want to do on it. And a storyboard. So I already made a storyboard, and so that's the boom storyboard. This is my developer art. So what we're trying to do is actually make it easy for designers to make cool things. But you know, my art is not quite representative of that. But the other half of this is the trigger, and so defining when the storyboard is actually going to play. So I can just say mouse left button down, but we can choose other events as well. When I play this, quick and easy. So I have a tree. I click on it, and boom, lightning strikes the tree. Cool graphics, amazing, fun stuff. Let's see. Now, not all the times when we actually want to do something are from simple events. And so the event system, the action system is fully extensible, and the trigger system is fully extensible as well. So we can choose different triggers as well. So one, just for example, is a timer trigger. So I want to say like every 1 second, I want the storyboard to play. And when we do this, that we will just have a series of lightning strikes blasting the tree, and if I had a little bit more time, I'd actually make the tree go up in flames. But you get the point. Let's see. So the other part is, so that's basically a quick intro to triggers and actions. When something happens, do something. And this whole system is completely extensible as well, so I mentioned that. So let's go into, this is actually, this talk is about how to actually create these so that you guys, this is a developer conference. Hopefully the developers can go home and actually create some really cool ones, and everybody can use them. So what I'm going to do is actually show how to make a new action, a really simple one. What I actually want inside of here is when I click on the tree for it to increase in scale by a certain amount. So I want it to grow and continually grow as things happen, as I click on it, every time that I click on it. So in order to make a new action, so I just derive from trigger action, and it is a generic type. This argument right here for the generic is what type of object it can be applied to. This is saying that it can be applied to framework elements. If I wanted to say that it could only be applied to like text boxes or something like that, I can make that a text box. It's an abstract class, so I'll just implement that. And the core method for actions is invoke. And this gets called when something happens. So for that like mouse down event, whenever the mouse down occurs, or for that timer every 1 second, the invoke method is going to be called. So within the invoke method, what we want to do is we want to increase basically the scale of the tree. For this, let's see, I just have a little bit of pre-written code. I'll explain what's going on here. So the associated object. The associated object in this case is a framework element, since the behavior says that it can only be attached to framework elements. And I'm just getting the render transform, and I'm ensuring that it's a composite transform. Composite transform is a new transform class in Silverlight 4. What it does is basically combines rotate transform, scale transform, translate transform, skew transform, all of those into one class. I could use a scale transform, but the benefit of using composite transform is that it has very fixed order of operations, and if there's another behavior attached to this object, which is using a rotate transform, that there's no conflict. If everybody just says, you know, ensure this thing is a composite transform, then behaviors can really cooperate together very well. So I'm just going to, like, if it doesn't have a composite transform, I'm going to set the render transform. Otherwise, we have it. And now what I want to do is I actually want to animate it. So I actually pull out some code. And so I look at the scale on the transform, and we'll just actually say new scale, so we'll increase it by 1.3 times. So every time that I click on the tree, it'll grow by a certain bit. Pretty straightforward. And then some code. This is just setting up storyboards from code. Why I need to do this is because it's basically dynamic how much it's going to grow each time. So when I build this, come back to Blend, and we will see that suddenly the grow class appears. It appears under the behaviors tab, but local things will appear in the project tab. So I can just drag, drop, grow onto the tree. We can say when I want it to grow, and I'll say mouse down again, run it. And it works. Animates nice and quick. Now, behaviors. One of the things that we really encourage is that you parameterize these because we really want everybody to customize them, add interesting properties and stuff like that. So really quick, there's a feature in Silverlight 3, and it's now in .NET 4, which is easing. So nice storyboards. You can actually design like how that storyboard basically bounces in or how it interpolates. So I'll just make a new property. So I have a little macro there to add a property, and I'll just say easing. Let's expose this. It's an easing function. And let's see. When we take that, when I add that easing function to my two animations. So I have two animations, one for scale X, one for scale Y. Build it quick. Go back into Blend, and you see the properties automatically appeared. So we reflect on the properties, just show all the properties just like any framework element inside the property grid. Since this is a property of type easing, then we actually show a nice editor for it. So I come in and I can actually choose like a bounce, and we can even customize like how many bounces. And if you see, like it's sort of cool, like our animation updates. I don't know, nice little tweak there. And then run it, and we have a good bounce for it. So basically, when you're writing programmatic, or if you have animations which need to be a little bit more procedural, we really encourage you to expose some parameters on it to allow customization. The next thing is actually showing a behavior that will, so this was triggers and actions, actually showing some behaviors as well. For this one, I have this bird actually up in the top right, and I want to make it like follow the mouse. So I'm just going to drag mouse follow. Let's take a look at that one really quick. So mouse follow is something, when you're working on behaviors, they can do anything they want, basically, to the element that they're applied and up the visual tree. So this behavior, this applies to framework elements as well. So you saw I just drag dropped it onto the element. And then it actually hooks up some events, essentially, on the root visual. So whenever the mouse moves anywhere on the screen, it's going to just change the render transform. It's a quick little effect. You know, this code has been copy-pasted like dozens of times, but we just are allowing it to be encapsulated and easily reused. So when I put that on, oh, and I also did like expose a little lag parameter so that it actually like you know, feels a little bit nicer. Good little bit of lag. Pretty cool, pretty basic. Just to show some more customization. So behaviors, you know, this didn't have a very distinct start and stop, this behavior class. This just always occurred. Sometimes you actually want to say this will occur sometime, you know, or say when something happens. So for this, I actually want to say that I want to allow the this mouse follow. Sorry, my mouse is, I think, reflecting badly. I want to say to start basically following the mouse at a certain time and to stop following the mouse at a certain time. In order to do this, what I can do is I can just, let's see, I'll come in and I can add some commands. And so if I actually expose any properties type iCommand from the behavior, so I added a start following, and this calls a start method on the class, and then a stop following, iCommand, then this calls the stop method. And these are the same iCommands that are in Silverlight and WPF. If I expose those, come back in, and then we get a slot for triggers to actually hook up a trigger to define when this is going to start and when this is going to stop. So I'm just going to add a trigger here. So normally the thing is following the bird is following the mouse all the time. So let's just say don't follow it when you start off. And let's just make it go, let's see, event trigger. I'm going to say whenever I have my mouse down on the scene, I want it to be following. And when the mouse is not down, I don't want it to be following. And that was, this control right there is the pick whip. It allows you to pick an element, which it's actually listening to. So now the bird isn't following by default. I press my mouse, and then when I'm like dragging around, then it's following me. And then mouse up, and it's not following anymore. Very easy. Let's see. Just to recap some of the stuff and some best practices. So when we're building behaviors, we really encourage focusing on the building blocks. I don't know, like I was a big fan of Lego blocks, like when I was a kid, and I really hated it when I got like the Lego blocks, which was like a castle wall or a boat or something, you know, because it was like you're supposed to build that. And with behaviors, that's what we really encourage as well. Like make the small things and make them customizable, have them be able to be linked together, and then you can make really cool things and allow other people's imagination to basically go anywhere. Avoiding specialization, I've seen some like behaviors like the media player where you drag drop onto all these like magic buttons and then it hooks up. That's pretty crazy. That's a great control. Smart defaults. So when you have these things, this goes for controls as well. When you drag drop them on, they should do something. They should have some experience. So I always try to make my defaults here do something smart, so that instant feedback, instant gratification is extremely important. And also be thoughtful about exceptions. This is something that we run into a lot, is that exceptions are not incredibly user-friendly. So be careful about how you throw them. Sometimes they can be helpful. Sometimes they get in the way. So the next thing, so this is like developer conference, and I'm sure that you guys have had like all this, you probably had this beaten into your head. I'm not going to go into it too much, but like there's the view model, view, MVVM stuff model, and from like the blend perspective, from like the designer perspective, there's just view and view model, and the model is actually hidden by the view model. But anyway, so what this is essentially the separation between the developer is working on the view model in code, and then there's the XAML, which is more of the UI. And typically this interaction is being done through bindings, is how you expose properties from your view model and actually hook them up to your view. And behaviors can actually help out here to actually make your applications, which are done this way, through the nice separation between the view model and view to allow the view to be a little bit richer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go back to a pretty standard application. So what I have is basically I have a list of products, and each of the products implements like I notify property changed and says how many copies it has and how many like what its product name is and stuff like that. Normally this would be backed up to a server with a bunch of validation logic and stuff like that. But for the purpose of this demo, don't need to do too much for that. Inside of Blend, I actually have just a list box that's data bound to that. I'm using the sample data feature that we used in Blend 3, or that we introduced in Blend 3. And so I have design time data for all those products, and we see the name of the products, just the expression products, and how many of them are in stock. Now, what I also have in here is like a buy method. So just when you buy something, the user is going to do something in the UI, and we want to actually buy this item. So just call the buy method. From a designer, I want to when I'm in the design phase, I want to experiment with different ways of actually buying this. For this one, I actually want to hook up something to when I double click on an item to actually put it into my shopping cart or something. So I'm going to go into the data template into the item template of this list box. So right now I'm just looking at the individual item inside. So I'm looking at this at the first row of my list box, and so there's this other behavior. We have a number of behaviors that ship with Blend. And there's also a number of behaviors that are on Codeplex on expression blend.codeplex.com. I'll show a link to that later on. But this is one of those. These are basically ones where we've been playing around, seeing what would actually be extremely useful for improving this workflow. So I just have call data method, and what I want to do is actually and this is one of the behaviors that's on Codeplex, and these work for Silverlight 3, work in Blend 3. I'm using Silverlight 4 and Blend for .NET 4 right now, but these work on Silverlight 3. So I take the call data method out, and I actually want to call the method on my data context, something which isn't super easy all the time. I want to call the buy method, and I want to do it like when the user double clicks on the element. So I'm just going to take the mouse event trigger, and this is another one out of the Codeplex project, which actually allows a lot more control over mouse events. So instead of just like the click event on a button, we can say when the user double clicks. Or you can say shift click, and you can say stuff like that. But I'm just going to say when the user double clicks, we're actually going to buy the item. In my code behind, so this is the stuff in my code behind. Every time that you buy, sorry, let me actually look at that really quick. Every time that you buy, we just decrement the copies in stock until it gets down to 0, essentially. So if I double click on Blend, then you see that copies in stock goes down to 0, and then they aren't available anymore. That was pretty easy to hook up. But what we really want to do is actually design basically a little bit more of the experience here. So when there are no more copies, I want to hide them. I want to change the experience. I want to change the visuals on that. So I'm going to go back into Blend and go back into my list box. Oops, sorry. And now add these. We have a feature in Silverlight and in Blend and WPF, which is Visual State Manager. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it too much, but we're really big fans of it on the Blend team because basically what it allows us to do is from the XAML standpoint, actually design different states of the application, different states of the data on the UI, and say one looks one way, it looks one way this way, it looks another way that way. And then sort of leave it up to the code to actually define like how to get into that, a lot of that logic. And we can do the same thing inside of like a list box for data templates as well. So if I wanted to say when it goes out of stock, that I actually want to hide like or change. I just want it to gray out, a little bit subtle. So I'll just say add a state group, and I'll add 2 states. So we have that it is my caps lock, in stock and out of stock. When it goes out of stock, a simple one is I'll just actually gray it out. So opacity, put it down really low. Oh, sorry, I ran too quick. The next thing, so we've actually defined the different states. So when it's out of stock, it's supposed to be hidden, or it's supposed to be sort of semi-transparent. When it's in stock, we want it to be fully visible. And now we actually need to define how to get into these states. For this one, I'm going to pull in another behavior, which is this is another Codeplex one, which is the data state. And I'll just put that on the grid. And what this allows me to do is to actually take some data which is exposed on the view model on the code behind, and actually use that to trigger like what the visual states are going to be. So for this, we have our sample data, and I'll just drag. This is a really simple gesture. So we support like the drag and drop from the sample data feature into Blend on any elements. And the same way that we allow it on elements, we allow it on behaviors. When I do that, it hooks up my binding. So I want to say when the number of copies in stock is greater than 0, then I want to go into like show the in stock state. When the copies are out of stock, go into the out of stock state. When I run this, then I double click some things, it goes out of stock, and it fades away. Now, with VSM, you can actually design transitions, you can do storyboards, you can do some cool animations. If you want to put in like a big red, like out of stock, like text on there, you can do that too. It's pretty flexible, pretty easy, and you can do really nice animations there. The code for this is actually really straightforward. Oh, and I also forgot to actually show the call data method. These are all really simple ones. Call data method is just an action. When the action gets invoked, it looks up its like method using some reflection. There's a little bit of smarts because we tried to make it like so you can pass in random properties into it. So you just call, like using reflection, just call the invoke. Data state behavior just listens for whenever this binding property changes, compares it to the value, and if it's equal, then it says go to state. Or, if it if it passes the comparison test, then it just calls Visual State Manager go to state. So you have the true state, the false state, and then let's see, check state. It just returns true, and if it is, then it goes to state. Not too bad. Another one. And so for this one, I actually want to say like if the item isn't in stock rather than like graying out, I actually want to hide it, like completely hide it. So I'll go here into the out of stock and just modify the root to be collapsed. And so I'll save that, and then go up. So when the item is removed, we have this other cool behavior that we've actually shipped with Blend 3, which allows some animation. So I'll go into the item panel. And so the item panel, if you're familiar with list boxes, it's a little complex. It's a little interesting thing. You have, on the list box, there is the item panel template, which is the which basically defines the panel being used to lay out all the things. In this case, it's a stack panel. You can make it a wrap panel. You can make like change it to be. This is where you change it to be horizontal or all sorts of crazy things. And now we have a behavior shipping with Blend 3, which you can apply to the stack panel, which will actually listen for anytime the elements inside of it move. Then it just listens for like the layout changed, and it says, oh, like the element moved to some like new location. So what I'm going to do, what the behavior does, is it says, okay, like undo that move using a render transform, and then animate that render transform to 0. And so this thing actually, this fluid move behavior actually works on any panel. It's pretty cool, it's pretty flexible. And we just say, actually apply to all the children in the panel. Anytime they move, we're going to animate them. Again, it's pretty customizable. I don't want it to take a second. I want to take about a third of a second. A third of a second is pretty good for UI transitions. 1 second is fairly long. So now, when I remove it, then you see that the items basically when the item got removed, when it went to visibility collapsed, that fluid move behavior actually animated down the item to 0. If I go back into that, that again also has the easing function on it, the same editor. So we can just say, let's see, ease Y. I want to make it bounce as well. I sort of like the bounce one. I like bouncy behaviors and stuff like that, bouncy effects. So this, yeah, so it has like a nice little bounce there, a little bit of feedback to the user. Pretty cool. So behavior is actually like a big thing about this feature. And what we're trying to do here is to make it easy to experiment, do crazy things, and have a lot of fun. And so we have, I have a number of like sort of ones that I'm not sure they actually fit into the whole like, rich application thing, but they are, it actually shows random ideas of things that you can do. And so one of them is like ripple click. So I threw this one together the other evening. I was like thinking about things. It's like, what are random effects that would be fun, that I want to play with? This one I want to actually give some feedback to where the user clicked. So when you click on the object, it actually takes an effect. And let's look at the code for this really quick. So what it basically does is when the behavior actually gets invoked, it looks at the mouse location where the click actually occurred, makes an effect, and so this is a ripple effect. This is basically from it's in the WPF toolkit or WPF samples up on Codeplex, and there are ones for Silverlight, and it basically just animates a wave going out from the mouse position. So I can just like drag drop that on there. Has a couple of parameters, how long it should actually take, and what the amplitude. Pretty fun one, something to actually just give some feedback to users. Pretty basic, but they're quick and easy to throw together. And once you do, then it's real simple to reuse. Let's see. Another one, and so this is actually one of my favorite ones. It's near and dear to my heart. If people have heard me talk about things before, is explode. So I don't know, something about my personality maybe. I like to make things explode. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that on stage, but anyway. So it's this cool behavior. It's a really fun one. Actually, like when I released this one on my blog, I released a bunch of other like random utilities, and I've been all proud of those. And this one generated about 10 times more traffic. And so this one is available on my blog. It's pretty cool. Like anytime you click, what it does is it takes a writable bitmap of the object that you clicked on, and then it takes that writable bitmap and it makes, this is about 500 rectangles, and it arrays them into grids, and then it basically animates those 500 rectangles using perspective transforms, and it has configurable explode positions of things like fly out in your face, and you can make them fly out and stuff like that. It's really cool. And you can also like shift click, and everything claps back, and then you have like a fully interactive list box again. Everything is undone. For this one, and so I actually used the same tricks that I mentioned before, which are the triggers. So we have the ignite. Ignite says explode. And then we have the implode. And I use the mouse event trigger to actually say, the shift click. So when I shift click to implode, this is a great example of like why you should actually use good defaults on your behaviors, because when somebody's actually wanting to blow stuff up, drag drop instant gratification blows up very nicely. That's what we're looking for. So we're trying to do great stuff like that. Another fun one, and this one will be on my blog soon. I've done demos before, and you guys can totally beat me up for not releasing it. But like behaviors or physics. So open source, there's an open source physics engine which I used, which is Box2D. It's really cool. There's a .NET version of it. And everybody in the Flash world basically uses, I believe everybody in the Flash world uses the Box2D physics engine. Super complex, does all this heavy lifting, like heavy math and stuff like that. And basically, like from Silverlight, I just did a couple of Silverlight adapters. And then, just made them wrap those adapters into a behavior. Then I can drag drop some physics onto basically the list box. And then I can also take, just say like a random ellipse, and I'll put mouse drag, so I have the ellipse go around. And then what you get is the ultimate like RIA application data bound server connected that you can like knock around your list boxes, and they're still fully interactive. And there it goes. Yeah, so this is just showing like some of the fun that you can do with these. That code is fairly straightforward, so it's pretty cool. Another random one, and so I have to preface this with I've been sort of forewarned never to demo this at all, or never to like release it or something like that. But that's no fun not to do it. And so I am putting it in with like physics and all this other explosions and stuff like that. But it is a sort of fun one. My mouse just went wacky again, sorry. So let me actually come back here and experimental and script actions. So it's sort of fun. So I'll just drag out a button. And what I actually want to do is say like when the checkbox, sorry, my scale, when the checkbox is checked, I want to turn the background to be like red. And so what I'm going to do is actually use a script. And so this is all using extensibility. I used the custom property grid extensibility, which Blend 3 has, or Blend 2, Blend 1 has. And they work for behaviors as well. So I want to be able to write a script. I don't know if anybody can guess the script language that I'm using, but I'm not going to maybe tell you. But if cb.is checked, if I can actually type, and then let's say layout root. And then let's see. I need to name this checkbox so all local variables are in there. Basically, it's like a really simple way to experiment without having to do too much work. I got my fingers crossed. I'm not too good at writing this code, and I didn't have time to do IntelliSense in my custom property editor. You can complain about that later. But let's see, when I click on the button, nothing happens, and click on the checkbox, and woohoo, like background turns red. So pretty cool. And that essentially is random things that you can do with behaviors. Hopefully I've given you guys ideas. The goal of this is to basically get you thinking about what you can do with stuff. Let's see. Sorry. So we demoed Some useful links. A bunch of the stuff that I demoed here is up on the gallery. For Silverlight 3, I'll be either on this site or on my blog, which is further down. I'll be doing the stuff for Silverlight 4, so updated it some. For the data binding stuff, I showed a lot of data binding on behaviors. There were tricks in Silverlight 3 to basically do data binding. Luckily, the Silverlight 4 team has done a great job, so you don't have to use any of those crazy tricks from Silverlight 3 in Silverlight 4. But like there were ways to do it, so that's actually a great feature. We blog a lot of this stuff on our team blog, and I occasionally blog this stuff on my blog. I got to be better about it, but I'll be updating with some of the stuff from this talk. And then feedback. Yep, just send some feedback, provide feedback, and let us know what you think. And remember that $1 for all of your feedback goes to support the Boys and Girls Clubs. So you're supporting the kids when you submit that feedback. And I don't know, hopefully I inspired you guys to do something more than write to databases and link to SQL and xQuery and all that. Thanks. And if there are any questions, feel free to step up to the mic, or I'll also be in the over in the big room following this.
I've got a couple questions.
Yeah. Yes.
The first one is any of this available in WPF 3.5 SP1?
Sorry, yes. So Blend 3 shipped with behaviors in Blend 3 SP1. So it's both Silverlight and WPF. All the ones up on the CodePlex gallery today and that shipped with Blend 3 are available for WPF.
Awesome. So one more question. You never showed the XAML on the Blend side. How are these behaviors attached? Are they just attached properties?
Yeah. So let me I can show that really quick. So that's actually a great question. What we did, let me actually go down to like the script action. They're essentially attached properties. If you didn't want to actually use the behaviors framework, you can do your own attached properties. Works really well. Basically, we encapsulated it, added a little bit more infrastructure around it to give you like the attached event to say, here's the thing that you're attached to. It's really helpful things, and also basically allowed it to be exposed in the tool. So that's basically how we know that we reflect over all the types that we know about and expose them in Blend. But you can actually do a bunch of this stuff through attached properties.
Great,
directly.
very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Question. Can you do behaviors in styles?
No. I actually had an early prototype of that. The thing here is that in styles, the behaviors actually get shared, or all the content of the styles get shared between all the things that they're applied to. And we really wanted to keep the coding model for behaviors extremely simple, extremely straightforward. So we wanted to have the one, like you saw the associated object. We wanted to have the one associated object that you're manipulating. And if we put it into styles, then you would have to handle basically like the array of things that you are dealing with. And it was actually very important for us to keep them very simple to use. So we had to sort of punt on that scenario, unfortunately.
Good enough. Thank you.
Yep.
I was wondering if composition transform was available in WPF4.
No, it's not. We've been looking for it. For WPF4, it's scale transform. Just do it straightforward like that.
Just checking. Thanks.
Yep. You can ask for it, though. I'll back you up on it. Anything else? All right. I'll be at the big room following this, and so you can feel free to ask me any questions or anything. Thank you very much.